This is Washington Policy Center's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly of Education. We break down the latest in what's happening in education policy for Washington State and how to create the best future for parents and students. Welcome to this episode. My name is Donald Kimball. I'm here with our Center for Education Director, Lieve Finna. We're here to bring you the latest in education news, both nationally and across this state. So let's start with the national news. What have you seen this past week, Lieve?
Well, so I'm still following what's happening in Texas because the Texas primary is coming up on March 5th, and there's quite a battle royale going on down there because, as you may recall, there were a dozen rural Republican lawmakers blocked the Governor Abbott's effort to pass universal school choice to families in Texas. And now those dozen or so Republicans are being challenged by Republicans in the primary that support school choice. And so that is amazing to watch because because Governor Abbott is not shy and he's calling out these Republicans who do not care about children getting more options in learning and who are siding on the side of the public education establishment and the union. And so this is quite exciting to watch, and he's doing a great job. Cross your fingers. We'll see.
So in these primary challenges, it seems that a lot of them are, at least the momentum is coming from challengers of established elected officials who are against school choice, not so much the other way. You're not seeing as much energy with primary challengers who are trying to unseat pro school choice legislators. Is that right?
That's right. They're trying to unseat Republicans who do not who defend the education establishment against the wishes of parents to have an
Yeah.
option for their child.
Yeah. So even, in contentious issues, oftentimes there's maybe a momentum both ways, but it really does seem like, at least in Texas, all of the energy is coming from the parental choice, parental
Yes.
say
Yes.
in their kids' education movement. And though
Yes.
that's the primary challengers are really coming in, not so much the other way around, at least from what I've
Yes.
seen.
Yes. It's
Excellent.
great.
Well, we'll move on to what's going on in the state. We're going to update you kind of in three segments here. We're going to talk about first what still could be alive but is not necessarily dead, not necessarily moving on. We'll hear about those. Then we'll talk about what has gone forward, confirmed, at least for now, not necessarily past both houses, but is moving forward. And then what has died. Remember, everything that is dead can be resurrected at the last minute. Legislative session is not over until it's over, but at least ostensibly are dead for now. So let's start with what we're not sure about quite yet, but we should know soon. Lieve, what do we have on that docket?
Yes. So there are a couple of bills that I testified on. House Bill 2494, the one to increase operating costs for the schools. That hasn't been voted on yet by the House. It needs to be by tomorrow, or it won't proceed to the Senate to go into law. And a second bill that I testified on, which is Senate Bill 5882, the bill to cut the ratio of teachers in the schools. That too is in this holding pattern, hasn't been passed by the Senate. So that's what's happening. So we won't know until tomorrow whether those continue on.
Just a brief, do you have any kind of insight as to what you think might happen? Is it anyone's game at this point? Does it seem likely one way or the other?
Well, I think they're likely to pass since the Democrats are in charge, and these are bills sponsored by Democrats. They want to increase the public school rolls and spending. So I think they're likely to pass.
Got it. All right. Well, we will keep you updated on that. And what has already passed, then I think there were two bills we wanted to highlight here.
Yes, so over the weekend, the House passed House Bill 2331, which is the bill that would cut funding to school districts that do not accept curricula that the state is mandating. This would basically erase local control in Washington State. And so that bill was passed on party lines. I have a blog post coming out on it soon on party lines. All the 58 Democrats voted for it. I think it was 39 Republicans voted against it. 38 Republicans voted against it. And so now it will move to the Senate for consideration. And the second bill that I saw is a similar bill on about curriculum that's going to be heard this week, Senate Bill 5462. But then another bill that we were involved in the hate crime bill, that is moving also. That is going to be heard. Uh, that is Senate Bill 5427, and that will be heard in the House Committee on Civil Rights and Judiciary. That's the hate hotline bill. Very bad bill. So those are bad.
Okay, so those are going to be moving forward, but we also have a list of ideas and bills that have not moved forward. So let's review those, and then we can kind of talk about specifics of other things after we get through those. So what
Yeah.
bills are dead, at least for now?
Yes. So big news on Friday evening was that the bill, Senate Bill 5770, that would have tripled the rate of increase from 1 to 3% for your property taxes, has been pulled by the sponsor, Jamie Peterson. So that is not moving forward. That's good news. There are other bills that are uh, bills that are not moving. The bill 2058 to replace parents as providers of food and nourishment that I was involved testifying on, that is not moving forward. There's a bill to remove the taxpayer protection of 60% to pass a school construction bond. That is not moving forward. There's a bill, Senate Bill 5956, to lift the lid on school enrichment levies. That too is not moving forward. And so that's pretty amazing. Some of the spending and taxing bills are not moving forward.
Interesting. And then unfortunately, there is also one other bill not moving forward that we talked about, which would be the charter school funding bill. That is not moving
Yeah.
forward as well, correct?
Yes, that has been pulled by committee, by the Senate Ways and Means Committee. It is not moving forward into law, which is, I think someone should sue the state of Washington on, because the public's, because there's just a prima facie discrimination against children who choose to go to public charter schools. They're getting less money than their peers in their traditional schools.
What did the people who was there any kind of rationale given when they pulled that? Was there a hot debate, against this kind of thing, talking about, maybe some of the tired arguments we've discussed about, draining money from the public schools or things like that? What is the general line they take, in particular in the face of the fact that so many of the people who would go choose, charter schools would be from lower income families or more diverse communities or places where their kids are just, they need a different option.
Well, it was so interesting to listen to the testimony and to see the count. Something like the people who signed him did not testify, but were pro the bill to give equal funding to kids going to public charter schools. It's like 550 people, something like
Wow.
that, and only about 50 signed in
Wow.
against. And they were all union representatives. And during the actual people who actually testified, about a dozen or so, uh, there was one opponent, which is WEA person, and all the rest were children, students who are attending these charter schools asking for equal and fair treatment, and principals who are trying to run these charter schools and do not have consistent funding, enough funding to provide what the students need. So, there's just, this is just a power play. The union hates charter schools. This is done by the union. It was done sort of, they just used the legislative process to not let it proceed. And so that's how they killed it.
Got it. Yeah, it seems like this is a very targeted response. Do you get a feeling that the education system itself is really trying to clamp down?
Oh, yes. I think the system itself may be feeling that they may be feeling the attitude that there's growing distrust of what's going on in the public schools, that parents are upset and frustrated that school officials are not listening to them. And I heard one testimony last week before on one of these bills by a woman named Nicole Wells, who was so excellent. She was a grandmother, a former public school employee, and she said, "Have you spoken to parents lately?" And she said, "Parents are livid." And then she cited one objection after another that parents have about what's happening in the public schools today, that the public schools are not listening to and they're doubling down on. And so I thought that just says something about, maybe that's why some of these extra funding bills are failing and extra taxing bills are failing, because there's like no longer this like, oh, we have to tax ourselves more for the public schools. They're not doing what we asked for. People are leaving. So it's just interesting to watch. You can't really, this is politics. You can't really put your finger on it at any one time what's actually happening. But in retrospect, maybe we're seeing a shift here.
Yeah, it's definitely possible. I mean, it is interesting to see, the things that seem to be moving forward, in many ways are things that, or at least going the way maybe of the traditional public school system are things that are more controlling of what ideas are allowed to be heard. So you have 2331 being pushed forward, which essentially eliminates a diversity of ideas within public schools. You have the hate speech reporting, which is going to sort of shrink the Overton window of what people are going to be, what they are and aren't afraid of saying. And then, of course, you're killing the charter school funding, which is another avenue through which people can hear a diversity of ideas. So it seems like those are being killed very quickly, whereas other types of bills, such as voter levies and property tax increases, they recognize that maybe, playing all their cards at once shows, when there are record funding, highest levels of spending per student, that maybe there's a little bit of more distrust that would be going on if you're trying to increase these numbers at a time when, again, revenues are record high for them. So it's kind of two different pieces there, but it seems like as far as the control of ideas goes, that's where the corporate, almost monopolistic structure of the public schools is really trying to cramp down and not allow competition.
Most definitely, most definitely. The idea of controlling thought and controlling what the children are taught in their schools about their history. They're trying to control what is taught in the schools, and this is like the what's the word for it? It's the flourishing of the idea that the government, when the government controls the schools, the government will inevitably try to teach children that all the justifications for big government. Okay, and so this is what you're seeing. You're seeing, but it's also extremely divisive. It's sort of the whole critical race theory, racialized curriculum that our history has to be viewed through the lens of class and race is so hateful and bad and destructive to children's hope for the future. So I don't know where this is going, but they seem to be trying to. It seems that the radical caucus in the Democratic Party is driving these things, this control over thinking and they're using the public schools as their avenue. We'll see what happens.
It's one thing when proponents of systems like CRT, critical race theory, or DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, they say, oh, we're just trying to offer these perspectives. We're just trying to make sure that, I don't know, racism or racist history or racist wrongs aren't erased and that they're taught. But of course, this facade really falls short when you say, okay, well, are we going to allow counter perspectives? Are we going to have, Thomas Sowell books being taught at the same time where, you're teaching things like maybe, inequality exists based on where you're born and through no oppression whatsoever. If you're born next to the Nile, you're necessarily going to be more well off than being born 150 miles away from it in the desert. So if it's like bringing these ideas and letting them debate and clash, that would be one thing. But it seems like the people who push the CRT DEI agenda then also say, oh, and by the way, any choice you want, any other school you want to go to, any other ideas you want to bring up, we're not going to let that. We're going to try to shut that down as quickly as possible.
I think it's very repressive and very bad. It's an anti-intellectual, anti-educated approach to things because yes, of course we should teach the full truth of our history, including the terrible mistreatment of different groups of people in our society. Of course we should tell the truth to the students, but we should also tell the truth about the great nation that we are and that the principles of freedom and free speech and all this free speech is like, this is not this is an idea that was in our blood when I was growing up, but it's being discredited in the schools now. You're not supposed to have free speech because if you say the wrong, you're not supposed to have independent thought. You're not supposed to think for yourself. You're supposed to, uh, bow down to the party line, and it's completely uh, dangerous and totalitarian and really the wrong direction for the public schools to take. And they are going to suffer the consequences. They're already doing that. That's already happening. 46,000 students have pulled their kids out of the public schools. More will leave. I mean, that's what's going to happen. And we are a wealthy society. People lean on their parents and their family members to help them educate their children some other place in the public schools because this is not what should be happening in the
Right.
schools.
Well, and that's exactly it. And when, of course, you have more options and choices, then if parents really do think it's important for the way that the public school system is currently handling topics like that, if they think that's the right approach, they can send them there. You know, that's not being eliminated when
Right.
you provide choice.
That's right, of course, and that's the whole fear mongering that goes on. If you give parents a choice, most people will probably stick with the public school down the street because it's convenient, and they'll supplement with their own ideas, you know, because even as hard as they try, the parents are the most influential entity in a child's life. And it doesn't matter how much the public schools try to misinform the children will learn from their parents. The books are online. You can still get the Constitution and all the founding documents and learn for yourself what the truth is about our country. So
That's right. Well, we will keep you guys up to date with the bills that are moving forward to see if they actually get into full passage. We'll keep you updated on the things we're not currently sure about, and then, of course, keeping you up to date on anything else that dies or gets resurrected. So stay tuned to next week.
thank you, John.